Hi guys, Dan here, and today we're going to be talking about The Protector's War by S.M. Stirling. This is a novel of the change, and it's book 2 in the Emberverse series, also book 2 in the Dies the Fire trilogy, which is part of that larger series. Check out my series intro video for more information on that. Also, the review that I did of book number 1 in the trilogy, which is called Dies the Fire. I'll try and remember to put links in the description for both of them. So I'm just going to do a quick review of this one. I'm not going to repeat anything really from the first one, so for more general stuff about the series, those other two videos are the ones to look at. So this is a work of speculative fiction and alternate history in a post-apocalyptic setting with sci-fi and fantasy elements throughout. And the premise, briefly, is that in 1998, modern technology stopped working without anybody knowing why, leading to a massive worldwide collapse of civilization and a massive die-off of the global population as disease and starvation struck. And then the survivors of this began to form communities and start to rebuild society. So in this book, in The Protector's War, we jump forward 8 or 9 years from the events of the original book, which followed the immediate aftermath of this. And we see how the communities in Oregon that we got to know in the first book are dealing with their new world. Stirling also gives us a glimpse of what has been happening in other parts of the world, mainly through following 3 new characters, so Nigel Loring, his son Alan, and their friend John Hordle, as they escape from a despotic regime in England and travel to Oregon on a Tasmanian ship that happened to be in port. And there they meet up with Norman Arminger originally, and then Juniper Mackenzie and Mike Hable, who are characters that we were introduced to in Dies the Fire. So is it any good? I mean, you know what I'm going to say. Yep, yes. This is really good. It's a really strong second entry in the series, and it carries on like a load of good work that Stirling did in the first book. You know, I remember the first time I read this book, because I've read it a few times now. The first time I read it, I had really high expectations that had been set by Dies the Fire, and I'm happy to say that this one totally lived up to them. You know, a lot of the main strengths of this book are similar to Dies the Fire in terms of writing great characters, writing great relationships, a really unique setting. So I won't repeat all of that, but you know, in terms of stuff that is specific to this book, one of the things I liked is we start to see a difference in worldview, I guess, between people who were adults at the change and people who were children when it happened. But you know, now we're sort of 8 or 9 years later, 10 years later, and these kids are growing into, you know, young adulthood now. And to that generation, you know, the world as it is now, the changed world, feels more natural to them. It's what they know, and they tend to have adapted a lot better than some of the people who were more sort of, you know, who were adults and who were perhaps more set in their ways before the change happened. And this leads to some really interesting dynamics. Another aspect that I really liked is that the setting has this feeling of like the characters are living through an age, like a legendary age, you know, like the Trojan War or like the period of King Arthur. You know, and you know, this is something that started in the first book, but Stirling builds on it in the second, particularly with Mike and Juniper. But at the same time, he's giving you their internal monologues and showing you just how mixed their feelings are about this. And we also see a progression in the world building, you know, as the sort of physical remains of pre-change society start to deteriorate. You know, you've got like cities burning, bridges collapsing, dams bursting, and alongside this, you also start to see the new communities really starting to forge very strong individual identities, their own cultures, their own traditions, their own customs. You know, Stirling calls it ethnogenesis. You know, one of the characters in the series anyway calls it ethnogenesis, It's a really fascinating aspect of the series to read about. I also felt that this book had great pace in the context of being a second book in a trilogy. He paced it spot on for that. The two plot threads in the first half really complement each other. You've got this like action heavy thread running through it with the English characters escaping, and that sort of alternates with much slower paced bits in Oregon that allow for really more in-depth character and setting development. Then in the second half, Sterling gradually raises the stakes as the tensions build between the communities in Oregon until what I thought was a really well judged climax. The last two chapters really highlighted the main strength of the book by being focused on some really strong character moments, with the plot almost being a bit of an aside. I was hugely invested in, and exciting to boot. I mean, in terms of weaknesses, I don't know how to pick out. I'll refer you to my previous video on Dice to the Fire for them, because really it's the same as in the first book. Writing style, sense of humour, perhaps maybe not for everyone, but minor things. So right, yeah, like I say, just a short one, but that was The Protector's War by S.M. Stirling. Really great book, fine sequel, and it sets up the third book in the series beautifully. So go out and read it. Yeah, so bye, I guess.